Hello and welcome to our daily devotional. I think everyone at some stage in their life realizes that they've freaked out about something that they didn't need to freak out about. It can be quite embarrassing, actually. I can remember when I was a student climbing the Drakensberg with my brother, and we had planned to sleep in a cave that particular night, lost the cave. And he was quite a seasoned climber, and so he said, listen, the weather's closing in. It's not wise to wander around the escarpment at night time with the weather like this. So we just got to make do and camp here. It was a terrible camping site. Anyway, just before the night fell, some baboons in a cliff close by started to bark. And we commented about these baboons. Anyway, we went to sleep that night, and around about 12 o'clock, there was this incredible sound. I think, in hindsight, the baboons were having a fight, and but it echoed through the valley, and we were lying there with this tarpaulin right above our heads because we didn't have a tent. We had just chopped some sticks and put a tarpaulin, and we couldn't see anything. It was dark. These loud baboons seem to be getting louder and louder. The one guy says, the baboons actually attack people. And at that moment, we just threw the tarpaulin off us. We stood there with our knives and our forks ready to defend ourselves. Anyway, we didn't sleep a wink that night. We lit a big bonfire because we had this theory that baboons wouldn't come close to you if you were at a bonfire. We burnt everything. We burnt our food. We burnt the packages. But when the morning broke, and my brother showed us where the baboons were, we realized how stupid we had been. They probably didn't even know that we were there. We had freaked out without having reason to freak out. David in Psalm 53 uses those very words. This is what he says. He says, but they are overwhelmed with dread where there is nothing to dread. And so in this particular psalm, what he does is he compares two groups of people. Let's look at these two groups. So the first group, he says, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. They're corrupt in all their ways and they're vile. And so he's basically saying, you're foolish. If you say that there is no God and it has a result in you and vileness and no good deed comes from you. And then he goes to verse 2 and says, so God looks from heaven, and he's not so concerned, I don't think, about the circumstances that are going on. He's looking at the heart, because this is what it says. God looks down from heaven on all mankind to see if there are any who understand and who seek God. He's looking at those who are seeking him and trying to understand the things of God. And then he switches back to this group of people and says, man, they devour people. They don't do any good things. And they vile in the very essence of who they are because they've denied God. And then he says of them, they are overwhelmed with dread when there was nothing to be overwhelmed about. Or freaking out. You see, when you believe God's not there, when you believe this world is falling apart, you pretty much are going to freak out. What are people freaking out about today? I mean, they're freaking out about the economy, they're freaking out about health, they're freaking about what the government's going to do. And pretty much if you're alone in this world thinking that the governments of this world and the economies have got to rescue you, you're going to freak out. But then David switches to another group of people. And this is what he says. He says, God scatters the bones of those come up against you. Verse 5 goes on to say, and salvation comes to those in Zion. He goes on to say, God restores his people, and there is rejoicing in Israel. There is a group of people who believe that God is supremely in command. He brings salvation to them. He brings protection to them. He brings a deep rejoicing inside of them. And he restores them when things have gone wrong. And so let me ask you this question as we bring this to a conclusion. Are you freaking out? And, if you believe God doesn't exist, you've got reason to freak out. But if you've put your trust in God, this is God's promise to you. He loves you. He'll rescue you. He'll restore you when things go wrong. And He will put a deep, deep joy inside of you. His eyes are looking across the country right now for those who will seek Him and will trust in Him and put their hope in Him. Well, I hope you have a great day. And remember what David says. It's the fool who says God's not in command. God's not there. But those who love Him, those who put their trust in Him, will be restored.